Well, howdy. Holy moly. I know what you mean, Playful. I know what you mean. Welcome, everybody. It is 7:30 p.m. CST on the 25th of September in 2021. And I welcome you back to episode 49 of Cast Talks. 49. Holy moly to that, too. My gosh. We are actually getting kind of unbelievably close to episode 52. Episode 52 being our 1 year anniversary of doing a Cast Talks every week. It's a lot of it's a lot of me talking, as it turns out, but today we have some good news showing up. Let me give you a few of those, just a few of them. So this is the show that happens every Saturday at 7:30, same time, same place. Though today I've actually moved us to just chatting instead of ASMR, just to see what that does. And we have in world first, top beef supplier approves methane busting feed additive that reduces gas by 55%. We have old Irish goats return to hills of Dublin after a century to join a firefighting brigade. The 9th of next month is our 50th. Wow. How India's air pollution is being turned into stylish floor tiles. And then finally, autism therapy aimed at infants may reduce likelihood of later diagnosis. So what we do here on this show is we sit around and enjoy the ambience and the atmosphere for just a little while. And then I talk about my week, people talk about their weeks. Generally, we just kind of go back and forth for a little bit, and I read some good news. And near the end of the show, we look at some animal videos. And if you just need somebody in the background talking for a little while, or if you want to listen to some awesome speaking, or you can get involved in chat, you're welcome to do either of those. This is the place for you. So, to start off with, I'll talk about my week a little bit. Let's get started. For the most part, I've been hanging out around the house, exercising, cleaning with my family. I spend a little bit of time every week, I would say, focusing on my hobbies, which right now include trying to organize and prepare for Dungeons and Dragons, a game that I run, which unfortunately hasn't actually happened in a little while. Though I did have a fun session with my friend Extreme the other day. And I'm actually going in for a job interview on Monday, as it turns out, to be a cashier at a hospital cafeteria. It's pretty crazy, actually, the idea of having a job somewhere. Not only that, but it pays. It actually pays something, and everyone I've met there so far has been very kind, and I have good feelings about it, despite my general fear of getting back into the workforce, which, is natural for somebody who hasn't worked in... oh wow, when was the last time I worked? I believe it was in 2019 that I had my last job. So, it's been over 2 years. Well, certainly the schedule is a little bit intimidating as well. It would have me working up before recent events. You're right. You're right, Playful, before recent events. And it has me waking up at about 5 o'clock in the morning to be prepared to go to work, which I think I can actually do. I'm not sure how easy it'll be at first, but I tried it this morning, and I did almost fall back asleep at one point. But at the same time, I'm looking forward to seeing what I can handle. And it's a challenge worthy of being faced, maybe even embraced. But for a little while, I had to contemplate if I was prepared for it. I guess everybody goes through periods of contemplation like that, but it's always a chill down my spine while I'm thinking about it. Maybe, maybe it's just a little bit of fear still running through my system. Fear and the thought of how things used to be for me before, before my recovery, before this show even, and even just 2 years ago, I was so much different than I am right now. It's very strange. It's very strange, but I found that I actually find myself enjoying it. Because who knows what could really happen, right? Who knows? But we're going to get on to some good news. So, to begin with, we have take a moment to appreciate nature's diversity with fun facts about the leafy sea dragon. As an example of the majesty of life, the art of camouflage, and the extremes of evolution, one need look no further than the leafy sea dragon of South Australia. Fondly called leafies by the Aussies of Melbourne and Adelaide, it is a member of the genus that includes pipefishes, sea dragons, and seahorses, and takes its name from the myriad of leaf-like protrusions along its body, which serve only to camouflage among seaweed and stalks of kelp. Feeding on plankton and small crustaceans, they can grow to almost 1 foot in length. For propulsion, they have dorsal and tail fins, which are actually transparent compared to the leaf-like body parts that do nothing. They gently move the animal back and forth as it swims, mimicking the dancing seaweed around it, much like a chameleon camouflages its movements on land. The dedication to camouflage and defense is impressive. In the wild, some individuals were observed remaining still for 68 hours straight. Furthermore, their body is coated in hard, bony plates and spikes, running along its body, ruining the day if a fish tempted to take a bite out of it. However, in a bizarre riddle, according to National Geographic, there's no sure evidence that any other animal preys on them. Maybe they beat the game, or maybe, as has been hypothesized with the American pronghorn antelope, they evolved their exquisite protection against a species which no longer exists. Living solitary lives around 160 feet underwater, the males and females will come together to breed. It's the male's responsibility to carry eggs and raise young. The female will lay 250 eggs and deposit them in a kangaroo-like pouch on the male's tail. Unsurprisingly, such a charismatic animal is prized as an aquarium species by collectors. And alongside pollution, these are the animal's biggest threats. Thankfully, the animal is not listed as endangered or currently listed by the IUCN as a species of least concern. But here's a picture of them right now, in case you're interested. Aren't they bizarre looking? They almost look like they're toys. You know what I mean? Like a toy underwater. Because they just look so strange. Oh, I see them. It took me a second, but I see them. It is very bizarre, isn't it? It's very, very bizarre. Like, if I just saw that in the water, I wouldn't know what it was. I wouldn't assume it was a fish, though. I would just be like, oh, it's a weird-looking piece of kelp. Because, you know, it looks so similar. And if you get a bunch of these guys hanging around each other at the same time, you're just going to be like, oh, it's just some strange ebb of kelp that's just floating in the breeze. But, I mean, look at them. They're crazy. I wonder, though, if they have just gotten so good at camouflage that nothing can see them anymore, or if they were just good enough that they outlived their predators, right? That, like, they survived so well for so long that literally nothing else exists anymore that still eats them. Right? Maybe their predator went extinct for some other reason, too. I can't imagine them getting all those spikes and thorns on them without having to have something to try and fend off with them, right? I like that story, though. I sea dragons, I mean, they seem really cool to me. I like the idea. Just as long as they're, like, small and friendly and not, well, you know. In world's first, top beef supplier approves methane-busting feed additive that reduces gas by 55%. This is by Good News Network from September the 19th, so it's last week's news. In response to climate change across the planet, the world's largest beef exporter has approved the sale of a feed additive that cuts methane emissions from beef and dairy cattle. Regulators in Brazil and Chile have granted full market authorization for Royal's DSM's Bovaer to be given to cows as well as sheep and goats. The company said recently in a statement, methane-reducing additives obtained their first approval after 10-year collaborations in a project called Project Clean Cow, and its success in 48 scientific trials on farms in 13 countries across 4 continents, peer-reviewed studies such as this one in 2020 at UC Davis that were published in scientific journals. A beef trial with Bovaer at Sao Paulo State University in Brazil, conducted in 2016 to 2017, showed enteric methane emission reductions up to 55%, which highlights the potential for radically more sustainable cattle farming in Latin America to further lower their carbon footprint, said Mauricio Haddad, President DSM Latin America. And the additive comes without adverse effects on performance, says Sao Paulo State University Professor Ricardo Reis. The IPCC stated that a rapid reduction of methane emissions could reduce the spread of climate change in the near term and have a positive effect on air quality, said DSM's Mark van Nieuwland. We know the agriculture and livestock sectors recognize this opportunity for change and are eager to act. Just a quarter teaspoon of Bovaer per cow per day consistently reduces burped methane emissions by approximately 30% for dairy cows, and even higher percentages up till 90% for beef cows. After suppressing methane production in the stomach, it is broken down into compounds already naturally present in the cow's stomach. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good one. So the idea of a cow, basically, that like, as they are consuming and eating grain or grazing on hay or grass, whatever cows eat. I don't actually know what cows eat for the most part, but the idea of them basically just doing what they do normally and giving them this small amount of additive in their food supply or in their water or whatever you want to do with it. That could make a pretty big change, because beef and dairy, grass usually, don't know if they eat anything else. I do imagine they eat a lot of grass, if nothing else. But the animal husbandry and animal industries of the planet do provide a considerable amount of greenhouse gases. So reducing those with a supplement like this, or even just mitigating a large portion of them, right? We've talked about this before, but every single small thing that we do as a people who all care about surviving, I'm sure, every small thing that we do to make the world a little less changed for the negative by our presence, it all adds up together, and it's going to take a lot. It's not going to just happen because of this, or because, you recycled a couple of bottles every week for however long you've been doing it. What matters is that everybody does their part. And I don't always do my part, I have to admit. I don't always do my part as much as I'd like to. Sometimes I make a little more garbage that I'd like to, right? Or I just spend more time with my computer on than I should. But I think I come out on positive for the other behaviors that I have. At least I can say that about myself. So I hope that anybody who isn't able to can get there at some point, because it is really important to be at peace with the idea that you're doing the best that you can with what you have and with what you've grown up with and what you've learned. Not everybody can save the world and make a cow thing that produces less methane gas. Some people just have to live their lives and save the people that they care about and save the people around them. And that might mean a hug, right? It might mean having drinks with your friends. It might mean anything. But the important part is that you live, right? You don't focus on the idea of this as being your problem or your fault, because if anything, the people that came before us are really at fault here. But that's a whole other discussion about whose fault things like climate change might be. But anyway, we'll get into that right now. So here is a significant win for the planet. Leaded gasoline finally eliminated worldwide. This is by Andy Corbley from September the 20th of this year. Leaded gas, one of our species' great pollutants, is no longer made or used. The last country which sold leaded gasoline, Algeria, ceased to do so this month. Well, I don't know how I feel about that with all this good news, I see Playful, but I think we're doing pretty good. This is 41 years after the first country, Japan, made the decision. It was in the early days of the automobile's ascension that gasoline producers began to add different chemicals to prevent damage to the interiors of their engines. Lead quickly began to represent the superior choice, which over the next 80 years was shot out through the exhaust pipes of cars around the world. U.S. researchers were already certain of lead's toxic effects by the time the EPA was created in 1973. At which time the U.S. began a 25-year phase-out. Japan only needed 7 years following those initial reports to ban leaded gas, with Austria, Canada, Slovakia, Denmark, and Sweden following shortly after. The US and UK finally removed leaded gas in the late 90s, after which most countries followed. The elimination of lead gas and lead from gas is one of the great environmental achievements that has ever been created in our time, Carol Browner said from the administrator of the EPA during the year 1996. Thousands of tons of lead have been removed from the air, and blood levels of lead in our children are down 70%. This means millions of children will be spared the consequences of lead damage to the body. Indeed, the global ban is projected to prevent 1.2 million premature fatalities worldwide and save a total of 2.4 trillion in medical costs from treating the associated disorders, which can damage pretty much everything in the body. A detailed summary of the leaded gas story published by National Geographic claims it took 10 years after the turn of the millennium to convince 107 countries to ban it, but 10 more years to convince the holdouts. By 2016, only the war-ravaged nations of Iraq and Yemen and the last major exporter, Algeria, were left. The successful enforcement of the ban on leaded petrol is a huge milestone for global health and our environment, said Inger Andersen, Executive Director of the UN Environment Program. It's doing a lot better than you think, though. Playful, so don't be too quick to judge. Overcoming a century of deaths and illnesses that affected hundreds of millions and degraded the environment worldwide, we are invigorated to change humanity's trajectory for the better through an accelerated transition to clean vehicles and electric mobility. I hope that good news stories like this can inspire you to change how you feel about the future, Playful. I do hope so. I understand. I feel the same way sometimes, I do. But every week, every single week that we do this, we get another good news story popping up about how things are better worldwide and how they're changing for the better. And with every one of those stories, we can safely say that even if it's only 1% better, how many stories like that have we had so far? Probably over 50, maybe even over 70. Wouldn't you say 70% is a big number? At least over 50, I see that one. I would say that 50 is not so bad. 50% better. And that's not even in a year. Imagine what can happen in the next couple of years. How much better it can get. So here's our next one. But thank you for saying how you feel, though. I appreciate how you feel. Chinese city builds a food court for elephants to feed future migrating herds after recent escapades, by Andy Cordley from September the 20th of 2021. In order to cut back on conflicts between humans and elephants, Chinese wildlife authorities have constructed a massive food court along established elephant migratory routes. Stocked with 5 salty ponds and many different kinds of plants that can satisfy their dietary needs. The elephant food court of Jinghong Nature Reserve spans 670,000 square meters, the same size as Porsche's Stuttgart car assembly plant, or around 62 European football fields. Gosh. Elephants roam vast distances every year, whether they live in China, India, or Africa. They have no concept of land ownership or borders, and can often bring economic ruin to any unlucky farmer whose fields are close enough at hand when an elephant determines it's time for lunch. Since the end of the last century, Asian elephants in Jinghong have enjoyed protected status and have grown in number from 85 to 185. This has led to greater conflict with locals during migrations. The food court was started last December and finished in May, and its position in a national forest reserve was cleverly selected to ensure they would pass it every year during migration. The food base, or dining hall, as Chao Wei, deputy director of Jinghong Reserve, described it, is meant to eliminate the need for the pachyderms to raid nearby farms. If provided with enough food, the elephants will not break into villages and croplands to forage, which can help resolve conflicts between local people and wild elephants, Mr. Chow was quoted as saying by the Xinhua news agency. Last year, 14 elephants trekked 500 kilometers during a migratory period that lasted 17 months, reported Xinhua. They've now returned to their traditional habitat of Moyang County in Yunnan, where all, including a calf born along the way, are stable and accounted for. So, I'm sympathetic, right? I mean, if I was just trying to grow some cabbages, right, and then every year, same time, an elephant just stampedes through my fences and eats like half of my cabbages or something, some crazy thing like that, which they would eat like half of them. I wouldn't be happy, right? I'd be like, I gotta find a way to stop these dang elephants, because they're ruining my career, my whole job. I don't even know if elephants eat cabbage, but if that happened, I don't know, I wouldn't be. I don't know what I would do. I'd try to find some way to scare them off, but they've made an entire shopping mall food court for them. I think that most of the time these animals are driven by the instincts that are already created and changed by our behavior of making their land a little more difficult to transgress and to move to find food through. And so when they get that hungry, they start searching outside of their territory, which territory here meaning like the area they're usually hanging out in. And when that happens, well, of course, there's problems because they're still looking for it. They're still looking for food, and they have to keep looking until they find something. And, elephants, I mean, they're not going to stop until they get to the food. They're big enough. They can plow through almost anything. But certainly keeping them out of the way of like actual produce farmers and out of the way of basically the yards and houses of those nearby, that certainly will provide some help, I'm sure. So here's the next one. This Nissan worker with enhanced senses has a job to ensure the perfect new car smell. What does a job like that pay? I don't want to make this a what does my job pay stream, but I'm curious, how much does he get paid for his nose, for his schnoz? The master schnoz. Car manufacturer Nissan employs a member of staff who has enhanced senses to ensure its products have the all-important new car smell. Peter Carl Eastland has a master's degree in chemistry and forensic science from Leicester University. But he also possesses an extremely acute sense of smell, a gift he realized he had from an early age, which allows him to identify more than 15 smell categories. I don't even know if I can identify 15 smell categories. Probably at least. Nissan recognized he has the nose for the job and appointed him as the odor evaluation lead engineer at its European Technical Center in Bedfordshire. His job is to ensure the consumer experience in the new Qashqai model isn't compromised by any unappealing odors. Peter, dubbed the Nose of Nissan, that's a great title, said, "I remember as a young kid playing games where we had to identify different foodstuffs, like flavors of chips, sweets, or drinks by their smell alone. I was able to correctly identify the difference between the own brand supermarket items and the leading brand's products, even when the flavor was meant to be the same. At Nissan, I work with a lot of different materials, for example, polymers, rubbers, and adhesives. Oh, gosh, here we go. Having a trained nose means that I can tell the difference between fake and real leather, or cloth and fabric. Oh my gosh, this guy. I can tell the difference. I don't disbelieve him, but it's still a strange statement to say. We aim to provide the best sensory experience for the customer, while tastes and preferences evolve over time. Smell remains a constant. Oh my gosh, this guy. He really likes he values his job very highly. I'm not the kind of person that can tell you not to be the car smell guy, but gosh, he's really into it. Therefore, it is part of our job to make sure that any material we use is always going to be perfect in terms of odor, and that all of the senses are harmonized. Gosh, this guy, liaising with the Nissan engineering and manufacturing teams, Peter and his team test all the materials. He puts his nose on all of them, such as the soft material used for the new 3D diamond quilted seats in a variety of conditions to replicate in real-world environments. I can't imagine how tired he must get from smelling things, right? Maybe he isn't. Maybe he loves it. Who knows? I would get tired, though. They have to consider that the chemical properties of these materials, such as odor, can change according to temperature. Where a potential new material or chemical is found to negatively affect the overall cabin ambience, Peter and his colleagues will identify alternatives to ensure the sanctity of the new car smell. Oh my gosh. The writing here is fantastic. It's really terrible. The evaluation process blends objective and subjective assessment, culminating in a rigorous process that leaves no stone unturned in the pursuit of that perfect new car smell. David Moss, Senior Vice President, Region Research and Development, added, "That new car smell isn't just a consequence of the manufacturing process." I mean, I figured that there was a spray for it, right? Little thing that they pipe into the car for a couple of days to make it smell that way. Months of work are devoted throughout the development phase of the new vehicle to carefully analyze the use of materials and chemicals such as seat fabric, adhesives, and polymers to ensure that they don't combine to generate an unpleasant odor for the car's occupants. It reflects the lengths Nissan goes to in order to make the ownership experience of any new Nissan exactly what our customers hope and expect, even in this very specialized area. I mean, that's about as niche as you can get. Honestly, trying to perfect the new car smell for Nissan. I bet that's... I don't know what to think about that. I know. It's like very strange that that's his job, is to sniff out problems at Nissan. I don't know. A part of me is like, can this guy just chill out for a second and not take his job so seriously? But I mean, I guess, maybe he's paid enough that he keeps his job very serious because of it. Maybe, who knows? Kuwait is transforming its massive tire graveyard into a new green city. By Andy Corbley from September 21st of 2021, a future city. A landfill of 42 million tires in the sands of Kuwait is finally being cleaned up and recycled. That actually sounds like it might be fun to some degree. This news in itself would be a major relief to locals who have to suffer from the clouds of black smoke arising during fires. But the government isn't stopping there. They're aiming to create a green city of 25,000 homes in line with a post-oil Persian Gulf with a focus on sustainability and tourism. The first step is to clear the ground. The Salmiya area, nicknamed Rubber Mountain, it's a great name, consists of hundreds of small ziggurat-like mounds of spent tires, a reaction from the 1 million cars which were added to Kuwait's roads over the decades. EPSCO, Global General Trading, has opened a recycling factory and facility for the tires, where they've been collected, shredded, and pressed into other materials like tiling and playground flooring. The plant opened in January of 2021, and has high hopes for exporting the recycled materials out to nearby Gulf neighbors. In their place will be South Saad Al Abdul City, a green city characterizing a new era in the Middle Eastern country. We've moved from a difficult stage that was characterized by great environmental risk, says Oil Minister Mohammed Al-Fares. Today, the area is clean and all tires have been removed to begin the launch of the project of Saad Al Abdullah City, expected to cost $3.3 billion and require 30 years to complete. The city hopes to feature green technology, presumably like the kind one can see in other cities on the Persian Gulf, both existing and not. Saudi Arabia is planning to build a zero-emissions, car-less future city that's centered around access to big data rather than water or crops. If you guys want to see what the city's supposed to look like, then here it is. Wow, look at that. Look at all these tires they're moving. Make way for the city of tomorrow. I don't really like all these tires here, so we're going to move them. Oh my gosh. I think that's a bot, but Haas00312 Pan is now following. So if you're not a bot, then thank you. But if you are, well, thank you anyway. See, we got a second one too. Haas00312 Receptive is following now as well. That looks like 2 bots in a row, but what do I know, right? But yeah, these people are working really hard on all this stuff that they've been making. Yeah, I mean, I hope they can do it, honestly. I want them to get rid of those tires as much as they will probably want them gone too. Maybe not as much considering they've lived with them for so long, but, you know, somewhere in the same ballpark. Here's another good one. Cozy dining cabins made from plastic bottles withstood the New York City hurricane and may be futures of disaster relief. A design for plastic bottles that can be linked together has caught on as a revolution in disaster relief. I don't think it meant New York City, I think it meant NYC hurricane. Sorry if I said that wrong, that probably didn't make that much sense. Oh, I think they actually did. Oh, whatever. Called friendship bottles. Haas00312 amount is now following too, so. Well, I mean, you know, keep it coming, guys. Thank you. Are also able to withstand Category 2 storm winds. Among the most common resource shipped on pallets to disaster-stricken areas is water. If that water were to arrive in friendship bottles, those whose houses were destroyed could use them to create a temporary shelter. The function of use as sustenance shelter is a no-brainer, according to the inventor of the friendship bottle, Tim Carlson. I think you're right too. But you know, Who can really say, am I right? Carlson had been developing the design for the bottles for a decade before recent events. But when he was seeing all the makeshift outdoor seating arrangements making his way to the recent event hit city, he realized it was the perfect opportunity to test his design. According to Fast Company, he contacted Peach's Kitchen and Bar and teamed up to assemble 2 small cabins of Friendship bottles with wooden support beams. Along with being quite a striking atmosphere to sit inside, because they actually acted like a big prism from passing cars, the cubbies stood up to the storms that recently smashed the Big Apple, proving the concept as a disaster-ready building material. I guess it was New York City. Through a partnership with the Center for Architecture, Science, and Ecology, Friendship bottles are being compared to other shelters used by the Red Cross and Red Crescent, including the scenarios and logistics of being relief efforts that might use them as delivery containers for water and subsequently as building materials. Elsewhere, plastic bottles are also being made into homes and shelters that are proving to be bulletproof and earthquake resistant in Nigeria, where they're filled with sand and pressed together with readily available mud. We've talked about that actually on this show. We've talked about that. Friendship bottles require no mortar or wire of any kind, offering a different kind of solution. One thing the Friendship team feel they have as an advantage is that there are far fewer limits on what can be assembled using the bottles after they're emptied. Rather than prefabricated shelters with constructions, the bottles can be turned into bricks, which can then be made into anything. Here's a video about the awesome brick bottles that they're making. You could put food in those too, couldn't you? Robin Williams look like. So these are the bottles. This is the guy who made these bottles. This is a man talking about them. And now it's loading. Look at those walls. A wall of bottles. Oh my gosh, look at this. Wow, you could really make a house out of these things. I mean, assuming that it's going to stand up to somebody running into it by accident, you know. Chris talks about the bottles. He talks about the bottles. You know, hey, that's that. Isn't that... No, it's not. I thought that was the guy from a Great British Bake Off for a second. Okay, it's fine. I want to see more bottles. Here we go. Time lapse. I love time lapses. Okay, I've seen enough. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. So here is the next one. Rare rhino species sees dramatic population growth from just 1,000 or 100 to 3,700 today as poaching falls. By Andy Corbley from the 21st of September. The populations of several species and subspecies of rhinoceros are increasing, some dramatically, while poaching rates in East Asia have plummeted over the decade, a new report from International Rhino Foundation reveals. Involving in all things rhino, the IRF releases an annual report known as the State of the Rhino. That's cute. Which this year highlights that even in the midst of a series of recent unfortunate events, dedicated individuals in a dozen countries are working to keep rhino numbers healthy and recovering. Indeed, the IRF have invested $20 million worldwide into rhino conservation projects over the last 10 years, and in many countries their work is paying off. The largest success has no doubt come by way of the greater one-horned rhino, native to India and Nepal. During the early 1900s, there were a mere 100 individuals left. Today there are 3,700 and an ever-increasing number. Over the last 8 years, poaching incidents have fallen from 41 in 2013 to just 1 at the present day. I'm guessing that's this year. In the Indian state of Assam, rhinos can be found in 4 protected areas, and this year the population in the magnificent Manas National Park on the border with Nepal had reached 47 individuals, having only been established with 4 just a few years ago. Nepal also saw an increase of 107 greater one-horned rhinos in their country. Javan rhinos in Indonesia welcomed 4 new calves into the world, increasing the critically endangered species to 75, greatly offsetting the rate of natural death. This is almost double the number of Javan rhinos from 2011. In Africa, the black rhino has seen an encouraging population increase of 16 to 17% over the past decade, while South Africa's rhino court, established to hear exclusively poaching cases, was reopened in April of this year, giving rangers the opportunity to testify against suspects without expensive travel to a major city and without poaching cases falling into a court backlog. In Zimbabwe, black rhino were introduced after a 30-year absence and are growing steadily. While in Kenya, anti-poaching efforts have dropped the number of rhinoceros fatalities to 0 this year, down from the high of 59 in 2013. We must act today to ensure these marvelous creatures can thrive for future generations, said Nina Fescoyne, Executive Director of IRF. Let's continue to build on our successes of greater one-horned, black, and Javan rhinos, and reverse the declines for Sumatran and white rhinos. Working together so rhinos can continue to thrive on Earth. That's pretty good. I'm happy about that. Let's see, how long is it? Oh, this one's pretty long. I don't know if I want to read all this. I'll skip it. We're going to finish off our halfway point with the goats, and then we'll move on from there. Ooh, I made some oatmeal raisin cookies today, and I am going to put those in the fridge and eat them in the morning. Not too many, though. I don't want to get sick. My stomach's already going to be in a bad shape from all the ab workouts I've been doing. So we'll try to negate any more problems there. Old Irish goats returned to hills of Dublin after a century to join the firefighting brigade, and they're loving it. This is from the 22nd of this month from Andy Corbley. After the peninsula on House Head caught fire last year, pouring clouds of black smoke over the financial district of Ireland's fair capital, city planners knew they needed to take a sterner stance on out-of-control weeds. Look at these horns. So they hired a crack team of landscapers led by a dedicated forewoman to manage the weeds after they quickly began to grow back over the fire breaks that had been dug. The Old Irish Goat is, amazingly, not the name of a pub, but a critically endangered species that was Ireland's naturally adopted breed, which had not been present in the hills in over a century. It is their ceaseless munching of local species that have made them ideal for the job of de-weeding. And for the next 3 years, in their new home, their appetites will become the ultimate fire brigade. Because the goat has had because it's been bred out of existence in captivity and only roams remote hillsides in small numbers. An organization called the Old Irish Goat Society has been dedicated to keeping their DNA free from domestic goat genetics and happily supplied a small herd of 25 to take over as house head in their new firefighter team. The old Irish goat with short legs, large horns, and a thick coat with small ears worn in the prick position. They're perfectly adapted to life on the Irish hills. Oh, look at these boys and girls. As Y would say, our goats come from the mountain and eat whatever there happens to be, scrub, heather, gorse. They're the most suitable for this task. The Old Irish Goat Society's chair, Padraig Rowney, told The Guardian, "We're giving our beautiful little creatures a job to do," which they're doing. They're not just a tourist attraction. They can earn their keep. Oh, lovely. I want to see these goats eating. Currently, the firefighters consist of 14 nannies and 11 kins, to be added to with adult males until it grows to about 100 goats. A necessary reinforcement as the strength of Irish wildfires in Howth and elsewhere have been growing over recent years. As strange as it may seem in a country as seemingly wet and cloudy as Ireland to have multiple firefighter units for a single city, the unique solution gives the chance for a largely forgotten piece of wild natural heritage to raise awareness of the fascinating breed on its own behalf. Let's look at some goats. I want to see some Roman goats. Oh, look at them go. I love the idea of them just wandering around eating anything they see, right? Because that's what they do. They're Roman. Look at that. I thought the butt of that goat was like a dog looking around because of the way... Never mind, I'm not going to say that. But look at this. It truly is wonderful. Let me turn this up a little bit. I don't usually have these on, but I'll give it a chance now just because.
As time goes by, we may see less and less of the old Irish type.
Oh my gosh, look at that hair.
Become extinct very, very quickly in the near future.
Oh, look at that boy. So I imagine that these goats are what leprechauns ride into battle, right? They have to be. Or maybe just to go hang out. So I certainly... I would not be against riding a goat around if they would let me. I think I'm too big though. Being 6 foot, not quite a goat riding size, unfortunately. Well, it's a big goat. So we have come to the halfway point, folks. And what that means is we are going to take a short break. So we're going to stand up, shake our legs out, and go get something to eat, get something to drink, go to the bathroom, and let your legs and circulation kick up again. But in 5 minutes, probably less than that, knowing how long I've been taking, we'll be back, and we'll sit back on down and continue where we left off. So go out there and get yourself ready to come back, because that's what I'm going to do. I have some cookies to attend to, so I'll be right back. And we're back. Hello everybody, I hope you had a nice little break. We did not have any more hotspots come by and follow us in the meantime, which, you know, I'm grateful for. So we have the big bald head of Jeff Bezos to speak about, only vicariously through his work, of course. But we're getting right back into our good news. I am drinking a little bit, the last little bits of my chamomile, honey vanilla chamomile tea, and it's getting me through all this talking, I'll say that much. You'd think that maybe I might have developed more of my resistance to speaking for so long. I've gotten a little bit more, though, over this whole year of doing it. Certainly, though, I think I've gotten better at speaking in general. But here we go. Bezos Earth Fund pledges $1 billion to conservative land, to conserve land and sea in critical areas. We can and must reserve this. By Andy Courtley from the 22nd of September. Jeff Bezos has placed an additional $1 billion into the Bezos Earth Fund to be spent on creating, expanding, managing, and monitoring protected and conserved areas of wilderness. The money will take the form of grants to organizations working to preserve lands and secure indigenous peoples' rights in the Congo, tropical Andes Mountains, and across Oceania. The latest pledge is on top of the 10,000 millions he's already devoted towards combating climate change more directly, with nearly 1,000 of those millions having already been distributed as grants. When people hanker for the good old days and glamorize the past, they're almost always wrong. By most metrics, life is better than it was in the past, Bezos said in a statement. But there is a notable exception. The natural world is not better today than it was 500 years ago, when we enjoyed unspoiled forests, clean rivers, and the pristine air of the pre-industrial age. The first round of grant money went mostly to large, well-organized global conservation names like the WWF. However, the Amazon founder isn't just throwing money around. Unsurprisingly, the man who transformed global e-commerce has a larger plan. Research has shown that if governments simply recognized all existing indigenous land claims, it would be the single largest conservation victory since the invention of the national park. The regions Bezos Earth Fund is looking to preserve are, to use the parlance of a famous television conservationist, chock-a-block with indigenous groups. I really hope that isn't offensive. Conservation is one of the most effective anti-poverty strategies we have, said United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed. I warmly welcome this generous commitment, which will help deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. We can and must reverse this anomaly, Bezos added. By coming together with the right focus and ingenuity, we can have both the benefits of our modern lives and a thriving natural world. I hope this commitment inspires others to make their own pledges to protect and conserve nature and help in the fight against climate change. I mean, I don't know about you, Playful, but that's some pretty darn good news to me. Now, we're going to take a short break from our news to look at some videos of animals. Now, I know what I want to look at. I want to watch some goat videos. So we're going to watch some goats eating weeds. I wonder what we're going to find. Oh, goats eating the backyard over 6-way. So I'm going to take a look at a few of these. So we're going to make it a loud moment here. Okay, I want to see this area get destroyed by the goats. The goats come in and they just start nibbling away at everything. All these weeds just worrying the entire area, and then the goats come in and they start biting them. And then people show up like, oh, look, there's some goats. But that's not the real thing. The real thing is that the goats have already gotten to work. This is just what they do. Naturally, goats destroy things that don't belong there. So I was listening to somebody recently talking about how goats are a natural lawn preservation item. Which, I don't know. I mean, if a goat could just show up every couple of weeks and mow my lawn for me, I think I'd appreciate that. That would be worth, like, paying somebody $10 for the gas price of them being moved to my lawn. As long as they don't... Well, they're vegan, they're fine. It's good for the lawn anyway. So, here's our next good news story. Listen to millions of monarch butterflies make one of the rarest sounds on Earth. Monarch butterflies fluttering in their millions on 3,000-mile journeys as luminous as stained glass. Seeing them mass migrate is one of the world's greatest spectacles. But what about hearing them? Phil Torres of the YouTube channel The Jungle Diaries has recorded the sounds of millions of endangered monarchs as they warm up and flap their bright wings along branches and on leaves and up tree trunks in the Mexican rainforest. So here it is, because you want to have this in the background too. Never mind, we're not doing that. Never mind. I think the goats will be enough. Man, those goats are going to work. Look at them. I wish that the goats had like a hive mind that could tell them to just like start in one focused area and then just sweep across over and over again until they reach the top. That'd be crazy. I'd love that. Or you could be like the goat mind. The goat hive mind, and you're controlling it with like a Thanos gauntlet, and then you're making them move. That's a video game somewhere. That needs to be a video game. That would make it great, like a duck game. Was that duck game or was that goose game? No, wait. Was that crane game? What am I thinking of? Crane game, goose game, duck game. Goose. Unfinished duck game. It was one of those. Goat game, though. Goat game sounds great. So here's our next good news story. Well, the duck hunt. I know what you're thinking, but no, not that one. I'm thinking of the one where you are like a goose that wanders around terrorizing a nearby area with a cavalcade of seemingly bizarre and impossible feats of agility and intelligence. It happens to be being played by the character. So, here is this one. Firefighters have been winning the battle to protect Sequoia's giant trees using foil blankets. Sequoia has some big looking trees though. I can't even imagine doing any damage to those. Expert firefighting, contingency planning, and gallons upon gallons of water mean that the stands of giant sequoia trees in California's Sierra Nevada mountains appear to be safe for future generations. The September 9th windy fire, started by a lightning strike, burned 25,000 acres in Perrine Sequoia Grove and the Red Hill Grove before it converged on Sequoia National Park. These firefighters wrapped many of the famous trees, such as General Sherman, the largest tree on Earth by volume. My gosh, look at that garden. It's being destroyed by the goats. They're coming in for the pickings, the leftovers. There's nothing left. They've demolished it. In fire-resistant foil capable of withstanding 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. The fortunate thing is, the Park Service has done a lot of prescribed burning in the park since the 1960s, and so it's making their job a lot easier, John Wallace, a chief firefighter, said during a Sunday morning briefing. There's also a myriad of walking trails in there which have given firefighters places to work off of, he added. The structures and the giant forest, the museum, all the infrastructure around the General Sherman tree, that's all got sprinklers on it, and firefighters are running those sprinklers pretty much non-stop to make sure everything stays wet. But right now, all the protection efforts in the giant's forest are going really well, he said. A trip to Sequoia National Park teaches one that the giant conifers actually withstand fires very well, and many of those who count of years stretch into the thousands would have endured many fires. Not like these trees, though. They can't endure those goats. There's too many of them. Their bark, like a giant spongy blanket, can be 32 inches thick. My gosh, that's thicker than that's as thick as the Mississippi, and protects them from the flames. The trees actually need levels of heat which only fire can generate to release the seeds stored in their cones. In practice, then, sequoias are literally born in flames. However, with year after year of California drought conditions mixed with predictions that weather events like fires will become more severe, it pays to be safe, and according to California Times News, more than 600 firefighters were battling the blaze at one point. Most of them were working within the trail of 100 Giants Grove. How much more? Oh, they've almost destroyed it. It's almost done. It's like the goats find like a systematic, whatever is sticking up the tallest, and they just grab that first. They go to it and they grab it. I am totally fine with goats doing all the heavy lifting for us. Let's see what they finish it off looking like. Look at that. They destroyed every weed without touching any of the plants that were supposed to be there. That's just insane to me. How did they know? I don't know how they figured it out, but they knew. They just knew. Oh, let them go. The running of the goats.
I love goats and
I love goats.
just they make me so happy. What do you?
I love goats. Okay, you know, let's dial it back a little bit. Okay, you know, where can I go to see goats just chewing on weeds? Never mind. Why am I looking this up? This is clearly not going to give us anything good. I just wanted to see it from those videos, I guess. But anyway, we'll watch later. I always hit something down my watch later waiting for us. Oh, here's a good one.
She loves car rides. She gets in there and she starts relaxing.
Aw.
Finds a spot to chill. She just kind of curls up in my shirt. And
Oh, I love that.
she loves playing in the sand, looking at what's in the sand, like if it's shells or just strange little things that she finds. It was my wife's best friend called her and said, "Hey, I have this squirrel that a cat had in its mouth, and she's a little scratched up, and we went to see her, and she wasn't doing well. So from that point on, I brought her home. I found out that I could use a kitten for her. It's quite funny how much she loved that stuff.
Oh,
You shouldn't even care that it's in her face. Look at the baby.
awesome. Oh,
She would not. I was the first visual that she
oh man, that's great stuff.
as well in my seat.
Here's another one. Lost sea turtle washed ashore with hypothermia gets flown home to Spain with its own boarding pass.
She will come to me and definitely make her.
I'll wait for this video to finish, actually, because I'm really enjoying the squirrel pancakes.
So I thought eventually she would run off. So we just really started working on things to make her more agile,
My gosh.
just comfortable with herself. Being a squirrel, I always knew that she was going to be hyper aggressive and she was going to burn a lot of energy and just need that extra attention. So
Aw.
every morning I try to give her the energy burn off just because I know it's
Oh my gosh.
the only reason I saved her.
Well, it looks like the page won't open anymore, so we're going back to this. So, we've had our squirrels for the day. An endangered turtle, I'm going to zoom this in, washed up in Ireland with hypothermia, has been returned to its native Canary Islands on a flight and even had its own boarding pass. The 3-year-old loggerhead sea turtle known as Julius Caesar, or JC, was discovered on the beach in County Donegal, but has boarded a flight to much warmer waters. Airline Aer Lingus teamed up with the Exploris Aquarium, where the reptile has been living for the past 3 years, to fly him to Gran Canaria for his release. Aer Lingus pilot Captain Peter Lumsden said, "It is our pleasure to welcome aboard a very special passenger today and to ensure the safe transportation of JC, the turtle, to Gran Canaria. Since they first got in contact, Aer Lingus has worked closely with the team from Exploris Aquarium and our maintenance and engineering and ground operations teams to ensure that all JC's needs are met as we complete this important mission. Keeping the turtle's temperature above 90 degrees is critical to his well-being, and he requires regular monitoring and shell lubrication, so placing him in the aircraft hold was not an option. His specially designed crate was securely strapped across a number of seats in the cabin. On January 2019, weighing a few hundred grams, 9-month-old JC is thought to have been caught up in the wrong current and swept along the Gulf Stream. Loggerhead turtles are endangered and are happiest in warmer climates, so the chilling waters of the North Atlantic put JC's life in danger. Fortunately, he was discovered by a local family and taken to Exploris Aquarium in Portaferry, County Down, to recuperate in a tropical tank with tasty snacks of fish mixtures and squid. No, not the squid. Recent events prevented him from his repatriation for 3 years. However, on September 15th, the now 25-kilogram reptile was packed into a waterproof crate and boarded flight EI-782 from Dublin to Gran Canaria. He was accompanied by his minder, Porteous Sampson, who ensured he was safely passed over to the Centro de Recuperación de Fauna de Silvestre Tarifa on arrival. Less than 24 hours later, JC became fully acclimatized to his new home and was released back into the sea. Apparently I can speak French just fine, but I can't speak English well enough these days. That's bizarre. Aer Lingus previously transported in the rogue loggerhead turtle Leona to Las Palmas, Gran Canaria in December 2014 after she was discovered in County Clare. Loggerhead turtles are a vulnerable and endangered species, and their numbers are in the decline in the wild. According to the World Wildlife Fund, they are the living representation of a group of reptiles that has existed on Earth and traveled our seas for the last 100 million years. Gosh. Well, folks, we've got a few more stories to go, and then we'll be straight into videos for the rest of the evening, and just be talking as well. So here is how India's air pollution is being turned into stylish floor tiles by Andy Corbley. In an effort to spare his generation from the choking air pollution in cities like Delhi, Angad, Dharian, Daryani has invented a filterless outdoor air purifier that collects air particulate matter that can be used by a company that makes custom tiling. I would buy that. Existing air purification infrastructure is very expensive, and many use filters to clean out particulates, meaning they need replacement filters regularly. Two of Daryani's 5 and a bit feet tall devices cost less than the latest iPhone while filtering 300 cubic feet of air per minute, more than enough for a small family house. His company, Prawn, has raised $1.5 million in a startup investment, billing itself as the world's most advanced, cheapest artificial intelligence air purifier. Firms in his home country of India, but other nations like South Korea and Mexico that still struggle with air pollution, have all shown interest. Daryani plans to use the money to run a pilot program across India this autumn, deploying the device in schools, hotels, and industrial projects. His prime directive is keeping the cost low, as those who suffer most from polluted areas are often the poorest in society. Many of the world's most polluted countries are among the poorest, Daryani explained to the BBC. Poor people work in factories, build the streets and infrastructure, and take public transport to get to work. They live and work in the most polluted environments. One of the major selling points of his purifier is that the collection chamber doesn't need to be changed for 6 months. But realizing what he and his machines had in fact captured was valuable raw materials, he gave the leftover pollutants to another Indian company called Carbon Craft Design. They make stylish tiles for floors and walls that clean sometimes as much as 5 kilograms of CO2 per tile and draw emissions from the transport, tanning, paper, and lubricants industries. Carbon Craft uses the powered air particulate like a dye, combining it with rock waste from quarrying to create a totally upcycled flooring product. Gosh. There's a lot of good news today. I don't like the news quite as well as I like last week's news, but this is pretty great. So here we have 2 more left. Here's our last 2. Conservation groups. Last week was good, but you're glad you got a bunch of articles anyway. You know, I seem to find the good ones. But this site makes it so easy. I mean, I just go to their front page and click the ones that look interesting, and, you know, there I go. I've got I've got over like 12 of these to look through, and I just read the best ones. It works really well. It seems to fit very nicely into this show. Conservation groups celebrate dam removal on Green River. Restoring health of fish and humans after 70 years by Good News Network from September the 25th. That's today. 5 environmental partners celebrated the latest dam removal in Kentucky's history last week, which will not only restore biodiversity and improve ecosystems, but also prevent deadly accidents in the future. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service partnered with the Nature Conservancy, Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, and Kentucky Waterways Alliance to push for the removal of lock and dam number 5 from the Green River near Round Hill. The Green River is one of the most biodiverse rivers in the country. It is home to more than 150 species of fish, more than 70 mussel species, and 43 endemic species that exist nowhere else in the world. Aquatic species include 9 endangered mussel species as well, 1 endangered fish, and 1 endangered freshwater shrimp. The Kentucky cave shrimp. Officials at a ceremony September 20th extolled the benefits of the dam removal that will make the river safer for people, healthier for fish and mussels, and an economic boon to local communities. I mean, basically everyone wins, it seems like. We are excited to partner with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Nature Conservancy on the removal of Green River Lock and Dam 5, said Louisville District Commander Colonel Eric Crispino during the ceremony. This project will restore the natural flow to this portion of the Green River, the most environmentally diverse river in the inland navigation system, as well as support our ecosystem restoration mission. The U.S. and Fish and Wildlife Service continues to lead the $4.6 million project, where crews have been deconstructing the structures on site since June of 2021. Work is expected to be completed in October, and the Nature Conservancy will take ownership of the site. Removing lock and dam number 5 on the Green River is really a big deal, said David Femester, state director for the Nature Conservancy in Kentucky. This is not just an ecological victory, but this is really a victory for river access and the local economies. We're committed to working with the local community, Butler County, and others to make sure this is a public park accessible to all. Green River Lock and Dam number 5 was built in 1933 to 34 for commercial use, but the Army Corps ceased operation of the structure in 1951 due to it no longer being needed, so they just left it there, you know. The structure has stood unused for 70 years, creating a pooled condition in the river with lower oxygen levels, more sediment, and higher temperatures. All issues for aquatic life and the overall health of the river. The dam also prevents a barrier to boat traffic and recreation with no portage or bypass options. Oh, wow. So they're basically just, this is just the worst that it could be. It's just a dam that it didn't even finish to just leave it there. Wow. Once the dam is removed, it will restore free-flowing conditions to 73 miles of the Green River. There are many Green River species that thrive in moving water. These include many aquatic insects that serve as food for foraging bats. That's right. Kentucky bats, including 3 bat species that are endangered. It will also improve safety and access for recreational canoeists and kayakers. I didn't know it was called being a canoeist. I always thought you were a canoer, not a canoeist. And overall fishery, including highly sought-after game fish, such as smallmouth bass, rock bass, and muskellunge. Smallmouth bass. This project illustrates the concepts of partnerships in revolutionizing the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. 2 priorities of the Chief of Engineers, Crispino said. The Louisville District is proud to be part of the partnership, and we look forward to seeing the Green River free-flowing again soon. Oh, man. Well, I mean, literally this show provides me with some of the best positivity I think I've had in my entire life. I mean, like, there's constantly news about good things happening, constantly just like, oh, wow. I mean, I never even knew that the Green River had a dam, but now apparently they fixed it. But I mean, you know, of course, at the time, it's 1933, and they're like, well, we could probably use a dam here, and so the military built it, whatever. And then they're like, well, we're going to use this dam, and they do for like 20 years, assuming one day they'll finish it, and then, you know, it's 1950, and they're like, well, we're not finding anybody, and we have other ways of getting around the river, so I guess we'll just leave it there. You know, it's the unfortunate state of affairs that it must have been, right? You know, I guess, I mean, you know, that's how it goes. And it took us almost 70 years, actually almost exactly 70 years, because it was like 70 years from 51 when it was abandoned to get rid of it. Oh, man, that's crazy. But we got him. We finally got him. It just took us a while. So here's our last good news story of the day. And then we'll move on to probably a little more animal talk, a little more. Maybe odd time for a story, who knows. Autism therapy aimed at infants may reduce the likelihood of later diagnoses. This is by Andy Corbley from September the 24th. An Australian team has developed the world's first behavioral therapy shown to reduce autism spectrum disorder-like behavior enough in infants to avoid, through improvement, a clinical ASD diagnosis. The therapy reduced the likelihood of ASD diagnoses at the 3 follow-up dates of 18, 24, and 36 months of age by 1/3 in 105 Australian children, and shows that early intervention when autism is only suspected can jumpstart the child's social skills and produce positive knock-on effects later in life. The therapy is known as the VIPPP method because that's how important our children are. Oh, very important person. In reality, it stands for Video Interaction for Promoting Positive Parenting and acts as a sort of translation app and play-by-play review, whereby following a period of interaction with a child displaying one of the 4 signs of early ASD, a doctor and parent can review footage of the interaction to help them understand exactly how the child is trying to communicate. Instances of avoiding eye contact or not responding to their name can be signs a child might go on to develop ASD, and working around those barriers to help a child develop social skills when they're so young was the key to the success of the trial. This is the first worldwide evidence that a preemptive intervention can reduce autism behaviors and the likelihood of a later diagnosis, said Professor Andrew Green at the University of Manchester, according to The Guardian. We think this is a landmark finding because it suggests intervention at this early time can have a substantial effect and may well change the way services provide support to a large number of children worldwide. While the statistical effect of the therapy wasn't immense, there were other positives. For example, the improvements made at the baseline were sustained by 24 months. Furthermore, while around 20% of the children who went without the therapy received an ASD diagnosis at age 3, just 6.7% of those who had the therapy did. That's almost a 15% improvement, and 15% is not nothing when it comes to this stuff. And that is the last of our good news for today. The last of our good news. So, I think it's time for a story. So, I have a story for you actually, I've just remembered it. When I was a very young man, and this is like about as young as you can get and still understand very well that you're different, right? I was always trying to make up games, right? Everywhere I went, I would try to make up a game or try to make something into a game because I was always very bored. And not bored in like a looking for trouble kind of way, in like a looking for fun kind of way. So that's just what I did. I would just make up a game and I would try my best to make it work. And so I would be in the middle of class and then I would try to make finishing my schoolwork into a game. But I think my gamification, if you can call it that, it sort of came to an end abruptly. And I think that came at the heels and also on the existence of me entering into my first relationship online. And it starts like this. I was a young 13-year-old young man who was on a game called IMVU, which I will not discuss about more than simply that it was an internet messaging service. And I had met somebody named Samantha. Now, Samantha, she was lovely. She was a nice enough person, a young tween like myself. But the problem was, instead of actually having conversations with her, I would always try to transform anything we were doing into us playing video games together. Not only that, but the only way I seemed to communicate any affection towards her was by how good she was at playing video games. Oh man, that sounds awful, doesn't it? Such is the early, methodology of a young man, I suppose, in this day and age. But it seemed like my methods of communication were incredibly specific, let's say. So, Samantha and I continually try to become more acquainted in other avenues besides simply using video games. However, I am so into the gamer culture, so deeply rooted into the gamer life, that I actually cannot any longer find ways to communicate besides that and whatever 13-year-olds might get up to in online messaging services. But despite that, it is difficult to really relay the frustration I felt, because I was very highly suffering from symptoms that are very similar to autism spectrum disorder. I was suffering from extreme forms of that, and also minor forms of antisocial personality disorder. So I was pretty poorly adjusted, right? I wasn't doing very well. But the most important part to remember is that I needed somebody to help teach me what to do next. And in the world, we don't really learn anything without being taught it by something, right? Now, you can learn things organically, you can learn things in stages that don't come from anybody else, but at the end of the day, something either inside of you or from the world around you teaches you how something is done. And what I seriously lacked was a mentor. What I seriously lacked was an icon or an idol. I didn't really have anything quite like that. As a young man, I might have looked up to certain people in media or in literature, or even created my own interesting depictions of heroism. But that's not really enough. I think that children looking to fiction for heroism is a bit of a tragedy. Just a little bit. Heroism, the kind that you see in war, or the kind that you see in tragedy or disaster, it's only an inkling, right, of the real thing. It's only a fraction of a true life hero. And when we look up to those heroes, we remember them for saving others, for healing, for protecting. And so often I use that same form of veneration to try and create a hero or an icon, instead of looking to those powerful people, those people full of courage and strength. One of them, I will say, is I believe his name is Dobbs. Damon Dobbs. Desmond Doss. I don't know, I thought Dobbs. Desmond Doss is actually one of my heroes. And I can't even remember his name completely. Forgive me, I'm a bit tired. But Desmond Doss, he is the main character, and Haas Waite is now following. I mean, he's throwing his weight around. Desmond Doss was, excuse me, a military medic in the Second World War, and he was a conscientious objector, meaning he refused to even carry a weapon of any kind with him during the war. And he saved over 75 people in one night. Over 75 people in one night. One at a time. And he was a very religious man. He kept saying, let me grab one more. Just let me grab one more. And in the span of, I think it was 6.5 hours or something like that. In the span of 6.5 hours, he saved 75 people. Individually, one at a time, he dragged them down to the rope, and then he roped them off of the ridge, down to the cliff sides, and down to the beach. He would go back and do it again. That's a hero. Not something from a book or something from a video game, but he is a real hero. That is somebody who is worthy of being seen as someone to look up to have an idol, to aspire to be someone like that. Vigorous, Haas. These names are actually pretty funny. And thank you for following. If you're even, I don't know, if anyone can even hear that. That is a hero to live up to. And that is one of the first, I think, real heroes that I found in my life. When I was around, like 19 or 20. Like I guess it's not fair to say real hero, but one of the first people that I deified for their actions, and I felt so just and so close and intimate of a connection to them because of that. Somebody who could save so many lives without firing a single bullet at anybody, without actually harming anybody. That's the kind of person I've always wanted to be. That's the kind of person that I aspire to be, and if I can help it, I want to be remembered as, and this is me looking at video games for a comparison here. I want to be remembered as the pacifist playthrough of Undertale. Somebody who withstood and dodged and accepted and benevolently, graciously, magnanimously welcomed the onslaught of damage or meanness or rudeness the world had to offer and transformed it into something beautiful, turning enemies into friends, changing the world for the better. That's what I aspire to. I hope one day I can have that verbal jujitsu so powerfully mastered that anybody who is aggressing towards me, I can simply transform them into my friend in a matter of minutes. Wouldn't that be lovely? I guess it's a tall thing to aspire to, but it is what I hope for someday. And sitting here with my co-host, friend, and moderator, Playful, and whoever else is listening, I hope that you've been enjoying this show so far. We've been a little quiet recently, and I can only assume as to why, but I hope that whoever is enjoying this, and that whoever finds this to be to their liking, I hope that you find that maybe you sleep a little better, maybe you relax a little bit more, maybe you feel just a little bit better after listening to me go on about these tirades of heroes and virtues. After all, I believe everybody in the world, right? You know, good or bad or small or big, has a chance to be a hero. I think it's up to us as a society to offer them the chance to take that chance. And then if they don't, that's on them. But anyway, we are about finished for today. We've had a bunch of kind of crazy, I don't know, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 followers in the span of 2 hours, which, I mean, I don't know if any of these actually count considering they're bots, but, you know, thanks, assuming they don't unfollow immediately. I'm not mad about it, certainly. I think they did unfollow immediately. Oh well. Oh well. Anyway, I won't worry about that for a little while. I won't worry about it. But yeah. Thank you guys, as always, for showing up and enjoying yourselves. And to everybody listening to this in the future, thank you for taking some time out of your day to enjoy it. And I'd like to say that we've had a good time today, but we have come to the end of our time for now. So thank you to Playful for moderating for me, as always. And thank you so much to everybody who is lurking on in and listening from their safe little place on the internet. And I hope that you guys all have a lovely night and that you stay safe and that you take care. You had a real great time, so I'll see you again real soon. You will see me again soon. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.